So just as way I kind of introduce myself, my name is Andy Grant. I'm 32, from Bootle, and I'm just going to share with you my story now. And hopefully by the end of it, it'll give you some perspective to know that no matter, how challenging and tough life may seem at the moment, anything's possible. My story started growing up in Bootle. I was just a normal lad who, enjoyed school, enjoyed playing football. Just a regular kid growing up in Bootle. And then my life kind of changed when I was 12. My mum was sadly diagnosed with leukemia. She battled leukemia for 3 or 4 months until she eventually passed away. And losing my mum at 12 was by far one of the hardest things I've ever been through in my life. I had two younger sisters who were 3 and 5, so it meant that I had to grow up pretty quickly and help my dad to look after my two younger sisters. Going through school, I was okay in school. I wasn't a kind of really naughty boy. I wasn't top of the class. I was kind of somewhere in the middle. My goal kind of quickly changed to just want to try and do something with my life that would hopefully make my mum proud, hopefully do my dad proud, who was doing a good job of bringing up me and my two younger sisters. And at the age of 17, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't really know what my path in life had in store for me. And then I saw an advert for the Royal Marines. It said 99.99% need not apply. And I think being the cocky 17-year-old I was at the time, I thought, you know what, I can be that 0.01%. I didn't have no history of anyone in my family being in the military, but there was just something about the Marines and that challenge that kind of lit up a fire inside me. I went down to the careers office, found out as much information as I could about the Royal Marines, and then before I knew it, I was hooked. I left home then at 17 to start Royal Marine Commando training. Now, the Royal Marines are based down in Devon, so about 300 miles or so south of Liverpool. And again, I absolutely loved it. It was probably the best decision I made in my life. It meant I grew up really quick at 17, being surrounded by men from all over the country, again with the goal to try and become a Royal Marine Commando. And some of the things I learned from Royal Marine training was, courage, adaptability, working in teams, determination. A big one for me is commando humour. And that's just being able to laugh at yourself when things aren't going maybe as you'd hoped. There's always two options. You can either laugh or you can cry. And the big thing that the Royal Marines teach is always try and laugh it off and know that tomorrow is a new day. I thankfully passed out of Royal Marine training, aged 18, and then went to serve with 4-5 Commando, who were based up in Scotland. I turned up at 4-5 Commando, being one of the new Marines, wanting to try and impress my new bosses. And I always remember this one morning, I turned up for work, and my Sergeant Major asked for 4 volunteers. So I straight away just stuck my hand up in the air and, trying to show my eagerness and that I was, wanting to impress. And the Sergeant Major picked me and 3 other guys. He said, you, and you. Thanks for volunteering. You can go back to your room, have the rest of the week off. I thought, this is brilliant. I've just volunteered and now I've got a week off. He said, you've got the rest of the week off because next Monday you're going to pick up a hire car, drive down to Portsmouth. You're doing a 2-week training package, and then you're going off to Iraq. And suddenly I'm standing there with my hand up in the air, being told that I'm getting shipped off to war. And that was me at 18. I spent the next 4 or 5 months over in Iraq. And it was my job to act as basically a teacher. I was coaching and training the Iraqi Marines and the Iraqi Navy in the hope that when we left, Iraq would be in a better place. And I absolutely loved my time in Iraq. It was really chilled out. I was never in any real danger. It was all about, again, the coaching of the Iraqis and the Iraqi Marines. So I came back from Iraq, again, after that pretty chilled out tour. I spent about a year or so back in the UK. And then it was time to deploy to Afghanistan. I very naively thought that Iraq and Afghanistan would be the same kind of tour. Couldn't have been any more wrong. It was completely different. My time in Iraq and Afghanistan were non-comparable. It was just totally different. Afghanistan at the time, in 2009, was one of the deadliest places on earth. Really, 108 British soldiers were killed just in 1 year alone. And they say for everyone that was killed, there's 7 or 8 that are seriously injured. That's nearly 900 soldiers seriously injured just in 1 year alone. So it's only when you look back in hindsight, you realise that we were in the worst possible place at the worst possible time. And my time in Afghanistan, it was like the Wild West. Every single time you stepped foot outside of your base, you came into some sort of contact with the enemy. There was constant firefights going on. The base was constantly being attacked. And it was just a really dangerous, rough time to be out in Afghanistan. I've been there 5.5 months or so. And then I had about 6 weeks left to push when I was involved in an IED explosion. It was the 3rd of February 2009. It was a routine foot patrol, one that we'd done hundreds of times before. My best mate was leading the way, and I was the second man. It was about 5 o'clock in the morning, so it was pitch black. You could barely see a hand in front of your face. And as I'm following in my best friend's footsteps, he turned to me and said that we needed to jump over this ditch. I said, mate, I'm right behind you. Whenever you're good to go, you just let me know. Followed in Ian's footsteps. He stopped at this ditch, and I was just ready again to follow him. Ian took a run and jump over this ditch, and what he sadly didn't see was on the other side of the ditch, in between two trees, there was a tripwire. This tripwire was attached to two bombs. Ian has jumped, hit this tripwire. Two bombs have went off in between us, blowing him forward and blowing me back. And in that one split second, my whole life changed forever. I was 20 years of age at the time, and I'd suffered 27 separate injuries. I had shrapnel to my face, I had a broken sternum, broken elbow, I had chunks missing out both forearms. I severed my femoral artery, which they say you can bleed to death within 6 minutes. Big chunk out my left leg. I'd broken both lower legs, and had severe nerve damage to both hands and both feet. The other Marines on the ground got to me as quickly as they could and started patching me up and doing everything they could to save my life. And then it took about 40 minutes or so for the helicopter to come in and pick me up. I remember those 40 minutes perfect until once I got put on the helicopter, they pumped all the drugs and bloods and fluids into me, and I don't really remember anything from then. The helicopter then flew to Camp Bastion, which is the main hospital in Afghanistan. I had 2 life-saving operations performed on me, and then my condition was deemed so serious that they got me straight back to the UK. I then spent 2 weeks in an induced coma, and when I finally woke from that coma, thankfully my best mate Ian was in the bed next to me. He survived the blast as well. And then from then, really, that's when my recovery started. But before that, I had a big decision to make. My right lower leg was really badly damaged, and they basically, I had 2 options. I had a big decision to make. The first one was being to amputate the leg. Again, it was so badly damaged that it didn't look like it was going to heal, so they offered me the chance to amputate it. The other option was a chance to go through an 18-month spell of a lengthy rehabilitation process. And basically, I'd lost 6 centimeters of bone in my fibula and tibia. And the idea was to break my leg in a separate position, put this big cage around my leg to keep everything in place. And then they basically gave me a couple of spanners. And I had to turn these spanners every single day for about 18 months. And by doing so, it pulled the bone apart and tried to grow new bone in between. So I had to make the agonizing decision of what to do there and then. And I didn't know what to do, to be honest. I eventually chose to keep the leg because I didn't want to live to be 70, 80, 90 years of age, always wondering, what if I'd gave the leg a go? Hopefully it might have healed. So I chose to keep the leg and wear that cage and go through the rehabilitation process. And believe it or not, it worked. I managed to grow back the 6 centimeters of bone. And it was a miracle. I went from a wheelchair to crutches to a walking stick till eventually I could walk around okay. My big problem was my mindset. Ever since I'd lost my mum when I was 12, I'd realised that life is so short. You only get one shot at it, and it's so important to try and live your life to the full. Jump at every opportunity that comes your way. Try and live life on the edge of your comfort zone. And again, this isn't a dress rehearsal. You want to try and get as much as you can out of life. And I felt like I had so much unfulfilled potential. I couldn't run, I couldn't play football, I couldn't do all the things I wanted to do. So in the end, I chose to have the leg amputated purely for a better quality of life. And in doing so, sorry, my daughter just came in the room, sorry. In doing so, I chose to have my leg amputated for a better quality of life. And that was a huge decision to make because, no one was telling me that I needed to have the leg amputated. It was all down to me. And again, the big kind of thing for me, the big reason for me to do that was I just wanted to live my life to the full. And I knew I would never have been able to do that with this leg that didn't really work. Like you say, I could only walk, I couldn't run, and I couldn't do all the things I wanted to do. So I chose to have the leg amputated. And it was such a strange day, even now when I look back, one of the strangest days of my life. I drove from Liverpool down to Plymouth with my dad where my operation was taking place. And I remember being in a hotel the night before with my dad, and I went into the restaurant, had a mixed grill. I always remember that. And then after my mixed grill, I went to the bar, stopped at the bar and had a beer with my dad. And as I'm drinking this beer, it suddenly dawned on me that this was going to be the last beer I'd ever drink with 2 legs. And no one was telling me that I needed to have it amputated. It was all down to me. I was making this big decision. I woke up the next morning and brushing my teeth, and again I'm looking down and thinking this is the last time I brush my teeth with 2 legs. And it was such a sad and yet exciting time because it was a big decision I was having to make. No one was telling me that I had to do it. It was all down to me, and it was all down to me wanting to better my own life. And obviously it was a hard decision to have my leg amputated, but I knew in the long run, it would be the best thing for me. I went into the surgery the next morning, had the leg amputated, and the surgeon come to see me a few hours later and asked me how I was doing. I said, yeah, I'm good, thanks, doc. Please just tell me everything's okay. And I said, I was obviously nervous to think how the operation was going to go. And the surgeon come in to see me. He said, there's good news and there's bad news. And straight away, my heart just sank. I immediately thought something had went wrong, and started to get a bit worried. And he immediately reassured me and said that the good news was everything had went really well. The operations went as planned. The bad news was that I was a big Liverpool fan, which I thought was a bit strange. And I remembered that I had a Liver bird and "You'll Never Walk Alone" tattooed on my leg. And when the surgeons made the amputation, he's now sadly cut off the word "alone," and my tattoo now reads "You'll Never Walk," which is pretty ironic considering the things I've went on to do. But again, it was another very timely reminder of that commando humour to, never ever take yourself too seriously and never be afraid to laugh at yourself. I spent 5 nights in hospital and then got sent home with a box of paracetamol. And then I started my new rehabilitation journey as an amputee. And as I went back to my rehabilitation centre, I realised, 3 things. And number one, I was controlling the controllables. Sometimes life can pass you by, and it's up to you to have the courage, to stand up and be counted, and to make those bold kind of statements in your own life and say, I'm going to take control of my life. And that's something that I've done. I was controlling the controllables. The other big thing, I was living in the moment. I wasn't too bothered about what my life was like when I had 2 legs, and I wasn't too bothered about climbing Mount Everest anytime soon. It was all about right here, right now, learning to live my life as an amputee. And the third big thing I realised was actually that it didn't even matter what was going on from the knee down. It was all about the top 3 inches. It was all about my mindset, my determination, and my attitude. Those would be the things that would make this a success or not. Through my rehabilitation, I've learned to walk, I learned to run, I learned to ski. I'd never been skiing before in my life. I learned to ski as an amputee. I'd never been surfing. I learned how to surf. And I just got myself fitter and adapted to life as an amputee. I also learned, very early just the importance of trying new things and jumping at new opportunities. I was very lucky. I got to try new things and really push myself and push the boundaries of what it was to be disabled, and again, just really push on and prove to people that, again, it doesn't matter kind of where you're from or what you're like physically. Most things in life is all about the mindset, and thankfully I was proving that I had a determined mindset, willing to try and push myself and try new things. I was very lucky that I got to take part in Prince Harry's Invictus Games, and the Invictus Games is basically a mini Paralympics for injured soldiers. I took part in the first ever one down in London. I took part in the 400 metres to 1500 metres in the relay team. I won 2 golds in the 400 and 1500, and we got a bronze medal in the relay. And for me to take part in the first ever Invictus Games and win gold and compete, it was on the TV. It was such an amazing feeling for me to think that, I'd made this decision to amputate my leg, and yet there I am a few years later winning gold medals, beating Prince Harry. It just all made me feel really proud that I'd made that decision to kind of better myself and better my life. I had no regrets of having the leg amputated. And on the back of the Invictus Games, a lot of my friends then went on to the actual Paralympics, and I wanted to do the same thing. Sadly for me, the longest distance in the Paralympics was 400 metres. I class myself as a bit more of a Mo Farah than a Usain Bolt. I'm not very good at the shorter stuff. I'm more of a long distance runner. And sadly, there was just no event for me to take part in. So not to be too deterred, I thought there's got to be other amputees around the world who like running longer distances. So I've done a bit of Googling, and I found out that there was a guy from Canada who lost his leg in a car accident, and he could run 10,000 metres in 37 minutes, 53 seconds. He was the fastest single-leg amputee in the world. I thought, you know what? I'm going to beat that. I trained, but I was getting nowhere near the 37.53. I thought, you know what? Am I doing wrong? The biggest thing I was doing wrong when I look back now is I was trying to break that record all on my own. And like I learned in the Marines, nothing great is ever achieved by one person going it alone. It's when you surround yourself by like-minded people, and you get that support network around you, and that's when you're going to achieve success. So the first thing I'd done was I went and got myself a team, and I went and joined Liverpool Harriers running club. And I don't know if anyone's ever heard the saying, but they say if you want to be a millionaire, the first thing you should do is go and hang around with a load of millionaires. You start picking up on the little things that they do, what they say, how they behave, what books they're reading, what podcasts they're listening to. And then before long, you'll find yourself a millionaire. But if I want to be a great runner, I'm just going to go and hang around with all the greatest runners in the city. And before long, I was training with these guys Tuesday, Wednesdays, Saturdays, Sundays. And I was always the slowest one in the group. But I didn't care because I knew just by trying to keep up with these guys, that would make me improve. So if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to change rooms. Life is all about surrounding yourself by people that are going to take you to the next level. And I'm very lucky now as a motivational speaker. I get to go around and share my story in schools on big PowerPoint presentations. And one thing I always say to kids and young people is that if you hang around with 9 idiots, do not be so surprised when you become the 10th. You are a product of your surroundings, so be very mindful of who you're surrounding yourself by. I wanted to be a great runner, so I surrounded myself by a load of great runners. And we trained and we trained and we trained to try and break this record. And I'm really pleased to say that in July 2016, I broke that world record by 36 seconds. I ran 10,000 meters in 37 minutes, 17 seconds, becoming the fastest single leg amputee in the world. And the best bit about that record, it's not that I'm the fastest one-legged man in the world. It's when I talk to able-bodied people and I tell them I'm the fastest one-legged man in the world, and they say, well, okay, but how fast can a guy with one leg run? And when I say 37 minutes, they're like, wow, with one leg. And the fact is, it's a pretty good time for people even with 2 legs. So it's not about being disabled. It's about actually being the best I can be. And one of the great things that happened on the back of my world record, I was lucky enough to have an autobiography written about me and a documentary watching me break this world record. And the really funny thing is, the joke that I tell about the world record is I'd done this race to try and break a world record and get myself in the Guinness Book of World Records. And this is a true story. When I did email the Guinness Book of Records and explain to them about my achievements, they basically said that because it was a world record, I would need international classification. And to get international classification, I would need an international medical. The next chance to get an international medical was going to be in Dubai in a few months' time. So they wanted me to fly out to Dubai to go and see one of their medical experts, one of their doctors, have a medical, just to make sure I've got one leg before they could give me this world record. I said to them, can I not just send a selfie or do a bit of FaceTime? Surely that can help. And they were like, no, it's a world record. It needs to be done all official. So to this day, I'm not an official world record holder. I'm just the fastest single leg amputee in the world. The great thing that happened was, like I say, a documentary was made about me. And someone from the Royal Marines watched this documentary and couldn't quite believe I'd ran 10K in that time, and invited me down to where I started my journey in the Royal Marines and invited me to a sportsman's dinner. And at this sportsman's dinner, I was awarded something called the Corps Colours, which comes as a form of a Royal Marine running vest. And that's a little bit like getting an England call-up. You play for Liverpool or Everton or whoever for a long period of time, and eventually you get that call-up. Normally, you only get one of these vests if you've been in the Marines for 10, 15, 20 years and performed at the highest level. For me not to even be in the Marines anymore and be awarded this Royal Marine running vest, that meant more to me than anything Guinness could have offered. And the one thing I want to kind of finish on really with my story is, hopefully it's made you laugh with the tattoo story, and hopefully maybe it's inspired you and motivated you to get up and get running and set some new goals for yourself. The one big message is what I really want to get across with my personal story is that, life isn't always going to be easy. Life is hard. Life is tough. Life is challenging. You can sit around, you can moan, you can make excuses and blame other people, or you can take ownership of your life and do something about it. And one of the toughest times of my life was when I woke up from that 2-week-induced coma. 1 minute I was this big, rough, tough Royal Marine commando in Afghanistan. The next minute I was being spoon-fed cornflakes by my dad in a hospital bed. And I had 3 big realizations to come to terms with. One, I knew that I would never be able to run again. I looked down at my leg and was so battered, broken and bruised, and had this big cage on. And I always had this dream to one day run a marathon. And I knew straight away that dream had gone. There's no way I was ever running a marathon, let alone getting a good time. And that absolutely killed me. That was the first one. Second big realization was that my career in the Royal Marines had gone. I love being a Marine. I love my job. I love the whole, everything about it. And yet there I am at 20 years of age being told that, I can't be a Royal Marine anymore. And that absolutely killed me. And the third big realization, the doctors told me that one of my injuries meant that I would no longer be able to have children. And again, at 20 years of age, being told that you can't have kids, that absolutely broke me. When I was 12, I had this vision after my mum passed away. I just wanted to have a big family. I thought I'll one day meet someone, I'll get married, I'll live in a big house, I can have loads of kids and hopefully loads of nieces and nephews and invite everyone round for a barbecue for a weekend. And yet there I am lying in a hospital bed being told that I could never be a dad. So my life literally went from being in Afghanistan, big tough Royal Marine commando, to within a split second being told that I'm never going to be able to run, I've lost a job that I love, and then I can't have kids. And if I want to try and flip it on its head, there's no positives to come from that situation. Life seemed pretty miserable. Life seemed challenging. Life seemed unfair. There was no motivational pep talk. Life seemed pretty horrendous. And then literally 10 years to the day, more or less, I found myself finishing the Liverpool Marathon in just over 4 hours, something I thought I'd never ever do. I ran that marathon wearing the Royal Marine vest. So although technically not a Marine, I still felt part of that Royal Marine family for having the vest. And thanks to the miracle of something called IVF, I've now got a little girl called Alba, who, despite only being 6, has got me wrapped around a little finger. And I think, that story can show people that no matter how down in the dumps you may feel, how worthless you may seem, how impossible your kind of dreams and ambitions and how far away they may seem, you never really know if something's a good or a bad thing until it's run its course. If anyone would have told me that getting blown up in Afghanistan was a positive, I would never have believed them. Yet I sit here now, 12 years on, and getting blown up in Afghanistan was probably one of the best things that's happened to me. And I think that comes from having hope. Surround yourself by good people, staying determined, always putting 100% effort into everything you do, jumping at every positive opportunity that comes your way. And again, the big one is having hope that things can and will get better. If anyone wants to take anything away from this, I'm just a one-legged lad from Bootle who happens to run really fast, and by doing that, I've been able to travel around the world and kind of make a career of myself as a motivational speaker. So again, if I can do that, and I'm a one-legged lad from Bootle, just imagine what you could do if you set your mind to things. Thanks very much.